Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of the FPL Hangover podcast, where we raise the bar and lower the tone, all things FPL related. We are back and relaxed after our summer vacations, shorter than usual, but we're here and we're going to bang out a couple of pre-season pods before the fixtures get announced and this circus starts all over again. But before I can continue, please allow me to introduce my podcast partner in crime, Seamus. How you getting on, my friend?
Very good. Good to see you again after a long summer off. How's your holiday?
It has been uneventful. It's been probably the shortest break we've had from FPL since ever, because of the whole restart thing.
Yeah. Are we not? We're not going to pretend like we haven't spoke to each other in weeks and things like that for the listeners and viewers here.
I should have followed your signals there and just went along, but instead I did a Seamus and completely sandbagged your joke.
Well, we'll be honest with our listeners and viewers as we always are, and that's why they're here, right? To hear who we think are shit at FPL and good at FPL as options.
I imagine
season,
you're
right?
here for so much more, Seamus, but you did mention something quite interesting there. You said viewers, and that is right. If you are listening to this, as you most likely are, through an audio medium, i.e. Spotify or whatever other platforms you listen to that on, we're also coming to you this season in YouTube. So this is a video just like the end of season review. This should be up on YouTube. I'm saying all this, hoping everything's going right. But this is being recorded live, and you will be able to see our precious little mugs live on YouTube at the same time you can see this on your audio platforms. So if you want to check it out there, now is your chance to switch. But welcome back to the FPL Hangover. And Seamus, how has your FPLing been since the game launched? Not a mere week ago.
It's been constant. Constant is a good word for it. Being online, tinkering with my team. Not an hour goes by in work without me making another transfer, despite the fact there are no fixtures. It's just good to try and see, what does my team look like if I go with this type of formation? What if I go with one premium striker and one mid-price and junk third? What does that allow me to do with the rest of my team? What if I go all premium in midfield? What if I go premium defense? It's good to kind of mess around with these things. So I sent you a draft earlier on today, and I was actually surprised that that's my team because I obviously made those changes yesterday, and I don't recall making those changes, but that's the position we're in right now.
Similar. We're getting prepped for this episode and going through a couple of picks that you'll see along the way. But I'm the same. Looked at my team and went, why have I only got one forward in there? But you mentioned no fixtures, and I think that's the key at the moment. It doesn't feel like it's really began yet. I mean, this is the first time I can remember FPL launching without fixtures, right?
Yeah, it is. And I've seen a lot of people on my timeline on Twitter. This is where I do most of my interacting with the FPL community. And some people out there seem to be, teach your own, but kind of spoil sports. They don't seem to be like in getting involved in the whole, yes, FPL is back. We can talk about FPL and talk about player prices. And we can mess around and tinker with like kind of formation changes. And this is the setup I want to have. I think it's actually quite refreshing, the fact that there's no fixtures, but some people seem to take the opposite view. They seem to be like, well, without fixtures, what's the point of even changing your team or making transfers? Like, well, it's good to kind of at least see how a structure kind of works from a price point kind of view, kind of have a few ideas in your head. And then when the fixtures come out, you can go, well, you know what? There was a time I was looking at a 4-5-1 draft that worked really well, or there was a time I was looking at like big at the back, big in midfield, and junk strikers that I kind of want to go with, something like that. So you can kind of mess around with it. So to be saying anyone who's making changes in their teams are pathetic or whatever, like,
well, I think you're being, I think
have a bit of enjoyment. I think that's in your life, have a beer and fucking
a little extreme,
your team.
Seamus. I haven't seen anyone going, oh, you're making changes without fixtures, you're pathetic, get back in the line, you're pathetic. No, pathetic. I do see their point though. It does feel a little,
you would.
I'm a spoil sport.
I'm not surprised Yeah, I'm not like I wasn't talking specifically about you, but only because I imagine you hadn't got
I did
around
my
to it
team. I did my
yet.
team. I've taken part. I haven't shared any pictures. I mean, there's endless drafts going around, and they do seem a little like shallow because, as we said, like that all changes. I mean, like look at this last week. We've seen both Manchester teams knocked out of Europe, so we were looking at a possible blank, and we may still be looking at it. I don't know if that's ruled out yet. That's my own ignorance. But we were looking at Man City and Man United being rested for the getting in a couple of extra weeks off and maybe missing the start of the season. Sure, that would have completely changed anyone's lineup. Am I wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. And when we discussed it last week or whenever we were discussing it last, I don't know if it was between just you and I or
I
if we
believe
mentioned
it
it on
was
the
our
pod,
annual
but
general meeting that we had. Is that what AGM stands for? Boom. We
yeah, that's
smashed
what it
it.
stands for. But yeah, so I can't remember if this is like being committed to YouTube already or a pod, but we were discussing it that look, game week one, we're probably the drafts I was making in there when the game launched was assuming I wouldn't have any Man United players or City players. But then City was the most surprising one. The United game, you could see potentially they could lose to Sevilla. There's not too much between them, but there was kind of such a big gap between City and Leon, at least a larger gap that we all expected City to go
Yeah.
through, didn't we? Um, but Pep, he overthunk it, and they got their just desserts. And yeah, it's very very uncertain. Even the great Ben Krellin with his spreadsheet magic isn't 100% on it when I last looked. Now maybe he's found out more since then. But until the fixtures are released on the 21st, we won't know if City or United have a game week one fixture. I mean, if they don't, I'm sure they will in game week two. It would be a disaster if they didn't have a game week one but had a game week two fixture because when I was looking at them possibly both getting to a final or something like that, I thought, well, you know what? They may not be back till game week three. And I don't mind like wildcarding again in game week three, but I don't want to wildcard in game week
No,
two.
I think that would be disastrous. And as you said, the fixtures are due out on the 21st. We are recording this on the 18th. Now it is late on the 18th, so it won't be released until tomorrow, the 19th. So it'll only be a couple of days before the fixtures come out, and probably make this
No,
podcast completely fucking redundant. But that's that,
no, it's just a caveat, but it is a caveat to what we're probably going to discuss tonight when we're talking
yeah.
about setting up our teams.
And
You
I'm
know,
just happy to be back in the saddle. Like I say, like the break has been the shortest we've had in the last previous 2 years, but at the same time, this is probably the most anxious I've been to get back in it, and maybe that's because the restart for me kind of whet my appetite a little bit. There's still a shit ton of lockdown going on in Ireland, especially. There's loads of shit creeping back up again. You don't know what's gonna kind of be around the corner, especially with sporting events and stuff. But the football was a real kind of a real distraction from all that nonsense, and to see it disappear and come back so quickly is a relief. I think that's probably why I'm
hmm.
so happy to get back in the saddle. And it came a little early in terms of production wise. I mean, screens and whatnot isn't exactly where I want it to be, but there's moving images, and I think the audio is pretty clear. You've got your new mic, Seamus. That's the season. I know it was in the last episode, but that's continuing into this season, and the audio fidelity.
Yeah, this is new for us. If you hadn't checked out the last pod and or last couple of pods, you know, up to the COVID-19 lockdown break, we used to pod in your gaff and in the FPL Hangover studios, but we had to do this remotely now. So we're kind of like all the other pods, and I like the fact that we used to pod together, but legal requirements mean that we have to be separated now, and I got to do it from my home. So I do need the proper equipment. So I got myself a nice little blue mic, and it's not as fancy or nice as yours, but it still costs a pretty penny. And hopefully the audio quality
Yeah,
is much better.
exactly. Yeah, no, you have the new mic, and I do miss the in the same room recordings, but I'm also happy to be trying new shit. I think I said that at the end of the last season. Happy to be kind of experimenting with
Yeah.
this remote viewing, and maybe we even get a live stream out before the season kicks off. There's only a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
but
I think actually this is a good opportunity because we're going to kick on into FPL players and who we like and stuff at the moment. But like maybe this is a good opportunity. I don't think we were even planning on doing this to introduce ourselves as who we are. Maybe you've never listened to the FPL Hangover before because this is episode one of what is now our third season.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm Seamus. You're Jer. We're both from Limerick, Ireland. We talk shit about FPL. We drink beer. I'm drinking Jameson
and I'm
ginger ale
drinking
right
wine.
now, and you're drinking wine. Yeah, you're turning into a bit of a wine drinker, the classier
I
of the
think
two
the
of
word
us.
you're looking for there, Seamus, is alcoholic. Because wine just gets your buzz on a little bit quicker, you know.
What's that famous quote? Wine is fine, but
Whiskey is
whiskey's
quicker. Yeah, that
quicker.
is. Suicide is slow with liquor. I believe that was from Ozzy Osbourne, and I'm delighted to have worked an Ozzy quote into the start of season 3. But you're right, Seamus. Maybe we should have introduced ourselves a bit more. I suppose I take things for granted. You are Seamus, I am Jer, and we are the FBL Hangover. I think that pretty much sums it up. One of the
We don't really need to go too much in there. We're veterans. What, 12th? This is our 13th, 14th season. Last year was our
veterans is
13th.
becoming a word that pisses me off a little bit. I like, and we use it, and it's there, and I'm just kind of like, is it too fucking arrogant? I mean, I don't know. I probably shouldn't even be doing this on the podcast.
Veteran
Yeah,
just means old. It doesn't
yeah.
mean like we're
We're at the
good.
bar. We've lost a leg or
Uh,
two. I've seen Mane triple captain get a one when Salah fucking, bangs in whatever he got. I know I picked the most recent event as opposed to, you
yeah.
know,
Maybe mention the time you had Stuart Downing
yeah,
in your
yeah,
team or something.
exactly.
Yeah, that'll tell you how long we're
It will,
playing.
but one of the things that never fails to tickle me for the new FPL seasons is reclassifications. And this year, there wasn't, it wasn't absolutely shocking, but there was definitely a couple worth talking about. And I think on top of that list was a Mr. P.E. Aubameyang. I assume he's moonlighting as a PE teacher. That's the way I read it. But yeah, he switched from forward to midfielder, and has seen a price rise from 11 million up to 12. But yeah, reclassification, Seamus, give it to me. What have you got?
Yeah, the reclassification makes it much more appealing. I'm surprised he went from 11 up to 12, considering at the end of the season he was pretty much close to his starting point or
I suppose
starting price again. He
he's
had an
trying to
amazing
balance out
season.
the midfield kind of potential, I suppose there.
Yeah, I think it's the position change. Now, last season he had 205 points, which was the same as his first full season. He obviously had the half season before that. He's been a consistent points scorer in FPL. So winning the Golden Boot the season before last, but 205 points would have actually been 230 points when adjusted for playing in midfield last year. He would have had an extra 22 points for goals, an extra 10 points for clean sheets, but he would have lost 7 points on the bonus because, as you know, when you're playing as a forward, a single goal is quite often enough to get you a lot of bonus. Look at Danny Ings last year, for example, of that.
Jimenez.
But yeah, when you're playing midfield, often you need a second attack and return as a goal to get a goal or something like that, or to get the bonus. So he would have lost 7 on that, and that's just something to be aware of for all positions, including another man who was classified from a forward last year to a midfielder this year,
Before we get on
Marcus
to
Rashford.
Rashi himself, back on Aubameyang, what do you make of him
Yeah,
switching to midfield? Does this make him more of an option, less of an option?
makes him more appealing. The problem is it puts him in that category with all the other premium players like Sterling, Kevin De Bruyne, Mane, Salah. You've got Bruno Fernandes. It's really hard to afford all these guys in midfield. Like we all want these. There's like also the likes just underneath those, like Son, maybe Pulisic, who had great seasons last year. If you have all these guys at around the same price, you're gonna have to leave someone out. So while Aubameyang is really, really interesting, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be times this season I'm going to have him. You could just find yourself with no option to get him if you've got, like, for example, Salah and De Bruyne, Salah Sterling or
Yeah,
something like that. It's really hard to get three of those
it's
guys in.
funny. Like we mentioned, him being probably the most significant reclassification, and as you said, it's because the midfield this season is such a packed, a stacked deck in terms of options. Like you have across the variety of teams, you have top class options in a pretty expensive brackets. I mean, if you were to ask me, and looking at the mids as they are, I suppose the cheapest premium midfielder in my opinion is Son. I think 9 million's pretty much a bargain in terms of what he can get you, but everyone at top
Yeah.
of that, your KDBs, your Sterlings, your Aubameyang now, your Salahs, your Manes, they're all pretty fucking expensive, and you touched on it there. It's the season where you're just not going to be able to get everyone. You know, like you can't have them all. And
Yeah.
last year we were talking about big at the back. This year, is it fair to say it's pretty much big at midfield, or do you think we've learned lessons from last year?
Feels that, yeah, I think I agree with that. It feels that way. But there was a logic behind going big at the back last season. And I don't think that should be completely forgotten. Just because it didn't work, if you actually went with it and stuck with it, it actually would have worked out just fine for you. There was value at cheaper prices. The likes of Lundstrom, for example, is the one that stands out from last season. But I think if you went big at the back, you would have been proven right over the long-term season. What I'm going to try and do this season, I just mentioned it briefly, is I'm going to try and avoid just spending too many transfers in defense and goalkeeper. I changed my goalkeepers 3 times last season. I made like at least one of them I think was on a wild card. So, but I did spend at least two of my 38 1 week transfers on goalkeepers. Shouldn't need to do that. I would. I didn't do the analysis, but I would imagine a good 10 of those were on defense as well, switching around. I remember getting the likes of Kelly, didn't really work, switched him out. One stage I got Bolly in, then I changed him to Doherty, who eventually was just the guy to settle on. Should have just made a decision earlier and stuck with them, stuck through them while they were blanking, knowing that points would eventually come. So I want to spend most of my transfers this year in midfield, and that's probably going to be. It's with credit to Late Riser, the guy who's been on the Fantasy Football Hub. He was number 1 in
Yeah,
India
that's
this
like
year.
his second time winning India, isn't it?
It's his
It's
second time
fucking
winning India.
insane.
I was a serious FPL player. Got to give him props anyway. But um, one of the things he was doing this year that I never used to do, and it's something I want to consider a bit more, and probably will try and implement a small bit this season, is switching between mids and premium players, not just mids, forwards as well. Switching between premium players for captaincy, not being afraid to take points hits if I think somebody's worth it. But you got to choose your moments. It's a boxing match. You got to choose your punches. Okay, so I'm going to be kind of doing that a small bit. The likes of Kevin, I can imagine being on my team all season, but I can see
Kevin. So
myself
we're on
having Salah for
a
5 points.
first name basis here. That's just going to be Kevin for the rest of the season.
Not necessarily. He could be also
Kev.
called
Okay,
Kev.
okay. Just so I know.
Yeah, Kev or Kevin. But yeah, first name basis because the man did the business last year. But the likes of Salah, I can see myself having Salah 5 weeks, jumping off over to Aubameyang for 3 weeks. Okay, time to move over to Sterling for a couple of weeks. And I want to kind
Yeah.
of be fluid like that. I want to spend my transfers on the guys that are going to propel me up the league. I don't want to be spending my transfers kind of going, you know what? Suchek could be an option
Are
here
you
for
shitting
fucking
on
3 or 4 weeks.
Suchek?
No, yes. If you're getting on him for 3 or 4 weeks, you got to sit on him as a season keeper, as your like fifth choice midfielder, set and forget, someone that you're just going to play there, or
Yeah.
bench fodder. No point. No point getting on him for a couple of weeks.
Well, let's. I mean, like
He's 5 minutes
kind of
for a
just
reason.
completely disregards fixtures, no?
Yeah, but the guys who are going, you should be looking at fixtures are your more premium guys. Your likes, maybe not the absolute premiums, but the likes of Pulisic. Chelsea got a nice run coming up. I'm going to get Pulisic. I'm going to get Ziyech. I'm going to get Werner.
Yeah.
United have a good set of fixtures. Time for Martial for a few weeks. Get him in. Things like that. I don't, and down as far as maybe about 6.5, but I don't expect any 6.0 players in midfield or attack to be like, maybe get them in for a good set of fixtures, but if they get 1 or 2 returns, you're
Yeah.
happy. I'm not expecting huge returns. And what I want to use my transfers on are those like, top players that can have big point swings that could propel you up the league. The guys I'm probably going to captain.
I
And I want to have a bit more few transfers this year to use on those, as opposed to that 4.5 four choice defender.
I get you, and I'm sure we'll be here this time, next year talking about how it all went wrong, and you should have been changing your fringe players. But you mentioned Rashford, and I cut you off, and I won't do it again. My apologies. He is another reclassification. He has gone from forward at 8.5 up to a 9.5 midfielder. And considering someone else who we'll get onto later, i.e. Martial, swapping from midfielder to forward, what do you make of him as one of the new reclassifications? Does he tickle your fancy, Seamus?
Yeah, well, I think it's hard to speak about Rashford without talking about Martial almost at the same time, and to an extent, Greenwood,
Yeah,
another player who's been changed from a forward to a midfielder. But we'll stick with Rashford and maybe Greenwood for a moment because they're both former, attackers, forwards that
oh,
are now midfielders. Rashford's got a price increase from 8.5 to 9.5. Greenwood 4.5 to 7.5, which is huge. That's about as large I thought he was going to come in at. Um, for just argument's sake, before the game week launched, before we saw the prices, I did my own price predictions for the main players I was interested in, what I thought they would come in at, and their value, and if I thought it'd
yeah.
be that way, I could compare it when the prices came in, regardless of
You
fixtures,
could
if they were
jack
worth
off
it or
if you
not.
got it
And
right,
Greenwood, I
and
predicted
not
at
say it to
seven point
anybody if you
five.
got it wrong. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But Greenwood is somebody who I predicted at 7.5, and he came in at 7.5. People were saying he's going to be at least 8, at least 8.5. And I was like, no, they can't put him up that high. But 7.5 was about as high as I'd go. And that's actually what he came in at. So he still proved could be really good value this season if
Well,
Sancho
I
doesn't
mean,
come
that's what
in.
I was going to mention
But you've
there in
asked about
regards
Rashford.
to like, do you feel that if maybe the Sancho deal had got wrapped up earlier? I mean, I suppose it's a bit redundant, but of course that would have had a knock-on effect on Greenwood's pricing. If United had brought Sancho in at the start, because he's definitely taking minutes off Greenwood. I don't know if Greenwood's
Maybe.
price is necessarily justified, considering he mightn't keep the
Yeah.
starting place.
Well, look, last year Greenwood
Yeah,
had 10 goals in the league alone. Like he what, 19 or 20 in all competitions. But 10 in the league, okay. He that would be translated into an extra 10 points as a midfielder. He also would have had an extra 6 points for clean sheets. He would have lost 5 bonus, so that's an improvement of 11. So he would have got 114 points as a midfielder. Now 7.5 is a lot of money for 114 points, but considering how little he was used at the start of the season, and he was just kind of a backup, and how much he's probably going to be used this year, I would imagine I can see him getting 140, 115 points next year. Now, maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe he doesn't get that many minutes. Maybe he just
yeah.
has a dry spell. But the man looks, destined to score goals. He knows where the net is. He's got a foot like a traction engine, and I think 7.5 could be like one of those players. If I can't quite reach to Bruno Fernandes, I think Greenwood could be thrown into a lot, and I think he will be in a lot of
Well, I
teams as a
mean,
result.
like you kind of mentioned Fernandez there, and I think when we're talking, as you said, with Rashford, we got to mention Greenwood, and we got to mention Martial. I think with the three of them, we also got to mention Fernandez. I mean, Fernandez is pretty much nailed on penalties now. I think we can all agree on that. There was a bit of doubt towards the end of the last season whether he was rotating with Rashford, but based on the last couple of matches, for me, I don't doubt it. Like it's Fernandez's, it's his spot to take. So I don't doubt, and he came in at 10.5 this season. I don't doubt that he'll be the talisman for Man United, and he's the one I'm looking at. I don't know if that's reflected in the draft. I'm going to show him whenever, but I know he's actually the one I'm looking at. And in terms of Rashford and Greenwood, both midfielders, now three Man United midfielders, are you looking at doubling up? And I know again, fixtures are going to fucking change all these answers, but like, do you think it's considering how big midfield needs to be, in terms of how many options are there, how many expensive options there, is it worth plumbing for a Rashford or a Greenwood as opposed to a Fernandez and saving yourself that 3 mil if you're a Greenwood owner?
Well, there's not a whole lot between Rashford and Fernandez, and I think Fernandez is going to have. Look, people are right in what they say. Is he's not going to get however many 20 penalties. You're not going to get 20
There's no
penalties
sign of
next
it
season,
stopping. They got
but they could
yeah.
easily get 10. They could easily get 10, and that's 50 points straight away. And he can score from open play quite easily. He didn't do too much this season, but he did it,
He
three
wants
or
to
four
score,
times.
I think, is the main thing with
And
Fernandez. He
he
loves
loves the
shooting,
shot. He
you know?
really loves to shoot. He's got supreme confidence, and he's he makes assists as well. So like I think he's going to be excellent value for 10.5. He was one of the first players whose prices I was interested in. For Let me have a look. What did I predict him at? I predicted him at 11 this season, so he's actually coming underpriced. So that tells me that I think he's undervalued a small bit. And when the
That doesn't
fixtures are
tell
good,
you that. It tells you that you could have possibly overvalued him.
it could have no, but to my understanding of what I think he would be worth would be 11
Yeah.
million. I think he's worth 11. I think the FPL is usually pretty good. I mean, a lot of those prices I've got there are what I think they will prove their
Yeah.
value
Hangover
at.
tangent. I
So
think the FBL are being massively influenced by the Twitter sphere in terms of just that seems to be where the majority of interaction is, and you know how so much shit is driven by interactions and whatnot these days, that you know based on the official FPL Twitter account and how that's varied itself in the last year or 2 years that it's been there. Do you think that's? I think that's had a knock-on effect on the prices. Like they have to be considering narratives and things that people are saying. I mean, there's lots of people that talk a lot of sense, so why wouldn't they? You know?
there's a bit of that. I think they have broadly underpriced a lot of players this year. I don't think it's because people want cheaper prices. I think it's probably got more to do with the fact that there's so many good players in the game right now. They've taken the strategy that, yeah, well, look, we can't make all these players, 12
Mm.
million. You can't just go, he's 12 million, he's 12 million. There's no choice. So I think what they're saying is because the abundance of players are useful additional players in the game, they've kind of gone, well, look, here's all the options you have, and they're all semi-affordable. Now you've got to make the decision as an FPL manager who you want, but you can't
Mm.
have them all. So you got to admit somebody, and then that leaves you and I in the position that, oh man, Sterling was nailed to my team with Kevin at the start of the season, but now I can
That's
get
gonna
like
crack me up every
Z.
time. I keep thinking of Home Alone.
I know that's kind of so do I
But I mean,
actually.
to
Rather
be
than
fair,
yeah,
I think even the KDB thinks of himself as Home Alone. He's done the ad, you know.
he looks like an
He's
adult
done the
Macaulay
ad. He's
Culkin.
done the
I don't even
aftershave gif. At
did
least
they
the
do that in
internet's
the
made
thing.
me think that. I don't know if it exists. I don't know what's fucking real anymore, Seamus. But no, you're right.
Yeah,
And I suppose like we could go further into Man United and what we're looking at, but we might as well save that and kind of shit until the fixtures actually come out because, as I said, maybe we do want to double up on United. Maybe we don't. Maybe the fixtures are shit. And
can
we're
I
like,
Can I get
you
one
can.
final word in on Rashford because I never actually spoke about it. And I can speak about Martial as well, just about talking about position changes. Rashford for a start got 177 points last season, would be 199 had it been adjusted for a midfield position. Would have lost 4 on bonus, but would have got an extra 17 for goals and 9
And just for
for clean
context,
sheets. So
where
that would have
does
been
that
100.
199 put Rashford in? Like, what kind of midfielders scored those kind of points?
Well, 200 is anything over 200 is what you want. I mean, if I look at it
No,
last year, let me
don't.
just
You don't
pull
need
up
to pull it
how
up.
many players
Just,
scored more than
just
200.
off the top of your head.
Off the top of my head, I would say that would probably put him in same level as Aubameyang last year. Aubameyang got
Yeah.
205 points. Um, Ings got 198 or something like that, I believe. So about the same price as Ings from last year as a forward. Um, so he's priced at 9.5. 200 points for 9.5 is really, really good. And I think it's worth it. So I think his value this season is going to be quite a lot. Now, he's not on penalties. I think he scored 6 penalties last year. Okay, he missed a couple as well. So his 17 goals could be reduced, but I think he's the sort of player that's improving each season. I can still see him getting 13, 14
Fair
goals
enough.
this
No,
year.
no, completely.
Maybe a bit more, maybe a bit more. So he could be
Well, what did he
exceptional
get last year? It was
value.
like
I
18,
think he might
19 goals,
actually
wasn't it? That
17 league
surprised me. I did
goals.
not realize he nearly hit the 20-digit mark. Especially, I know he was out for a little while, but like, I just didn't feel like he was, up there. But
He hasn't been the same. It hasn't been the same since his back injury. I've watched him so many times. I've had him in my team, and I've watched him in Champions League, and he looks
I,
like he's struggling. I'm hoping this summer
yeah,
break
I
might
don't want to
help him.
armchair manage too much, but I probably tend to disagree with you there a little bit. I think it's a bit more complex than that. I think with all the shit he's been doing off the field, all the fantastic work he's been doing off the field, that has to take a bit of focus off you if you're asking me. Like just, but look, as I don't really want to go into it, I think it's speculation. I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at, and I feel that yeah,
Mm.
bar a few games like where he was probably one of the better players in the pitch, he has looked pretty much off it since the restart.
Crystal Palace
Yeah.
game, he looked on it. Southampton game, he did. I think he got a goal and assist in that. Didn't look particularly good. He just, Martial toe poked at him. He couldn't miss from there. I think he got an assist as well, possibly. But he, apart from those two games, a lot of games I've seen him in, he was just, Martial
Yeah.
was the guy to go for. Greenwood was on fire. Bruno was excellent. But himself and Pogba since the restart haven't been great, and I'm hoping they can pull back. But my point is, if he got 199 points last year, being priced at 9.5 in midfield this year means he could be brilliant value if he can get the same kind of performance again. But will he get the same amount of
Mm.
goals? I'm not sure. Martial, on the flip side, got 200 points last year. He's priced even cheaper at 9.0. He's now a forward. But had you adjusted his points as a forward for a forward position last year, he'd be on 175. So he's lost a huge amount of points. 25 points he's lost. Kind of the inverse of Aubameyang. He would have lost 17 points because he only gets 4 points for a goal instead of five. He would have lost 14 clean sheets. 14 points. That's a lot of clean sheets. He would have got an extra six bonus. It's not enough to make up for it. So yeah, while he looks great, he would have only after a brilliant season where he got 17 goals. If he gets 17 next year, I guess that's a success. If he gets those 17 goals next year and the amount of assists he got as well, he'd still only get 175
Yeah.
points.
So does
Jimenez is better
yeah
than that.
is that putting you off Martial? I mean, I think we're spending a bit of time on
Small
Man
bit.
United here. As I said, we can go into it in bigger detail when the fixtures come out. But yeah. I mean, I think
They're the main price position changes though. So like three of their players have been changed positions. So it's
no, it
important to
is, it
speak
is,
about
and
them.
I'm not undercutting it.
We'll stop talking about
But
them
either
soon.
way, I'm the same with you. Like Martial is currently in my team because of the striking options. I feel like he's whatever. Like he's 9 million. I think he's just a nice placeholder until we see what fixtures are coming out. That's something we'll get onto later on. But you mentioned him. He did switch from midfielder to forward. And looking at other teams and other midfielders to forwards, you have a Richarlison from Everton. No price change. Started last season at 8. This season at 8. Now he's a forward. He's playing pretty much up top with DCL. It is worth noting that towards the end of the season, the last two games specifically, I believe Everton played with one up top and Richarlison on the left with a five midfield or something similar to that. Or it's worth noting whether this continues, into the new season. Is this reclassification something that's really gonna be detrimental to his FPL returns?
Yeah, well, last year, had he been classified as a forward, he would have scored 12 points less, all things
Not a
considered.
lot.
When you take out the goals, clean sheets, would have got an extra 10 in bonus points, so he would have definitely got more bonus. But again, would have lost nine clean sheets, and he would have lost 13 points from the goal, the point less you get for a goal. So yeah, 12 points. He would have went from 165 down to 153. When you think that, Pope last season, he was 4.5, he's 5.5 this year, got 170 points. You know, is 8 million for 153 points
I think
good
we'll have to
value?
see. I
Not
agree with you. I
really.
think we'll have to see what Ancelotti manages to do with Everton this year because I was actually went pretty heavy with Everton after the restart at the end of last season. Kind of stung me a bit. They just weren't scoring a lot of goals. Yeah, I got a few
Yeah.
goals for Richardson, but DCL fucked me. And I know I'll be standing back a bit this season to see if Ancelotti manages to, excuse me, to fix that scoring issue. If they become an attacking option all of a sudden, I'd have no problem playing 8 million for a striker. Especially, I think Richardson is a pretty
Mm-hmm.
fucking
It's not bad, but when you consider that Jimenez and Ings are
yeah,
8.5, I can't see why you'd go for
yeah.
Richardson.
Again,
I do think though, with a caveat, I'm going to put an asterisk next to this. I do think that Richarlison could have a 20 goal season in him. Maybe not 20, but like an 18, 19 goal season in him at some stage. If not this year, the following year, if everything get their shit together. If anyone can do that, Ancelotti is the manager that can do it. So I'll be keeping an eye on Everton. And if they look like they've got their shit together,
yeah.
then maybe he's a good option then. But for the moment, there's just too many doubts about him, and there's other proven assets I'd rather have for zero point
No,
0.5
I
million
completely
more.
agree with you. And before we move off of the reclassifications, there's one more left. Actually, no, there's actually the honourable mentions to do as well. But one more left in the midfielders forwards, and that's Antonio, who's been moved from a 7.0 midfielder up to a 6.5 striker. I don't see an issue. For me, I don't have an issue with that. I think 6.5 is exactly what I want to pay for a West Ham striker. I think if his minutes
Yeah.
continue as it did last year, not necessarily his form I don't expect to continue, especially not for 6.5. But like if he was tipping away and getting the 90 minutes and West Ham looked like they were any bit competent as a football team, I'd have no issue playing that.
Yeah. I like him for 6.5. There's no other way to say it. I thought it'd be more expensive. Not surprising he's classified as a forward. There's doubts about, they've got Haller to come back into the team, I guess, when he's over his injury and stuff like that. But 6.5 is a great price for him. I'll be looking at him at various stages. He was, or is he still in my team? He's not in
We'll
my team
find
at the
out
moment,
after the break.
but he was in my team
No,
the
there's no
first couple
break.
of drafts.
There's no break, James.
He was in my team after the first couple of drafts anyway. So, yeah, I like him. I think he's worth that price. But you just got to look at the fixtures. Without fixtures, if his fixtures are amazing, the first few, I'll have him. If not, I'll have
If
like
we were
like
to
Wood.
do a shot every time we mentioned without fixtures in this episode, and we're not even halfway through, I'd be pissed by now. It'd have to be a write-off. Am I wrong?
Yeah, but yeah, no, not wrong with that. Nothing wrong with Antonio. I think he's good. But there was a few other price changes throughout the season that are worth mentioning as well. But those were the
There,
main
and you
guys.
segued perfectly into my transition. Lundstrom, what we all mentioned last year, I think I was quoting a 6.5 midfielder. He's not. He's 5.5, but he is a midfielder. And that's him done, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, he did mention Richie is now back to a midfielder. He's kind of flip-flopped over the last couple of seasons. But is that midfielder or a defender, Seamus? Am I talking to my ring?
No, Richie's he's moved
Yeah.
from defense to midfielder. He's still
Yeah.
5.0. Was he 5.0 or 5.5 last year? I can't recall, but he's 5.0 this season either way. He did spend a lot of last season playing like
He
right
did, and he
midfield and
scored a
things
couple
like
of
that.
goals towards
But
the end of the season, which is probably ringing fresh in FPL Towers. But also we have Fernandinho, who has now been reclassified as a defender. I think that's kind of interesting because we know how
nah, no
well you've no
interest.
interest now until like City's backline get decimated, and you're like, oh well, they're going to play Fernandinho. I mean,
Well, are they? I mean, like Laporte is a lock in there, especially with the preseason after him. They bought Ake, although Ake is a left-sided centre back, so he's
yeah,
left-footed as well. So will he play along and he play two left-sided centre backs in defence? I don't know because there's no problem playing two right-sided centre backs, right-footed centre backs together, but two left-footed centre backs seems a bit odd.
I
So
think
maybe he
that's I
will,
think that's
but
racist, but I think what I'm trying to say is that
it's leftist.
Fernandinho now makes sense in the FPL as before when he was playing as a centre back and was still classified as a midfielder. He was don't fucking touch. Now he's kind of moved himself into if the stars align, I can see myself with a City defender in a double game week kind of situation. But yeah, no, you're right. In general, not a whole lot to think about there. I do think. Go
The
on. Sorry.
problem oh sorry, I was just going to say the problem I don't like about Fernandinho is like he's 35 now. He's going to be 36 before the end of next season. He's going to get reduced minutes. His importance to City is going to be reduced. They bought Rodri for this reason. I can see him playing in midfield more than I can see him playing in defense this season. But Man City are really good for clean sheets. I just don't see him providing any real attacking returns and getting reduced minutes. And there's
No, you're
just
right.
better defenders out there for
You're right. You're right. I
5.5.
probably shouldn't have even put him on the goddamn screen, Seamus. I'm sorry.
A lot of people I've seen online, I think
No,
he's a
he's a
good option.
terrible option for
I've
the
no
start of the
interest.
season. He's a terrible option. I'm not saying that in the slightest. I'm just saying as an FPL asset, he has now become slightly more valuable due to the reclassifications. But
True, but he was
he
jump
was jump
status
status
before.
before. I agree. Someone who I think is the most interesting of the honorable mentions here, and that's Diego Jota. He has now been again kind of flip flopped. If memory serves me correct, he came in as midfielder, forward, now back to midfield. He's now a 6.5
Hmm.
midfielder. probably something I didn't see coming. I didn't think necessarily his games, we spoke before the show, but I didn't think necessarily his games warranted a reclassification. Again, that could be me being an ignorant some bitch, but he was the most surprising to me.
Yeah. I mean, with the new FPL have kind of classified the reason why they've made Aubameyang's position change. Basically, if you're not playing as an orthodox number 9 in this game, you're playing out wide or something like that. If you're not playing in a two up front, or if you're not playing in that central role, you're basically a midfielder now, which makes sense. It makes its consistency. That's what Salah and Mane have been like. Sterling, Hazard in the past, things like that. Um, and same reason goes for Jota. He's been like that position before, although he has played in a two up front quite a bit. They've obviously made the decision that he's just played on the wing a small bit more than he's played up front, so therefore he's going to be that. Now he's the same price as Traore, so I think I'd almost rather Traore for 6.5. I think Traore is going to have a big season ahead of him this year. He's going to continue to improve, but Joe, he has shown in the past he can get the goals. So I just think there's going to be competition between Prudence and Neto as they develop. They're young. Neto especially is young. He'll be given more chances. Prudence they bought in January, and he's shown a lot of. He's shown really potential. No, 100%. Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna crack this can here. So sorry for that.
Sip a beer for the working man, Seamus. You know how it goes. Last on the reclassifications list is Eric Dyer, 5 million Spurs defender right now. Again, I'm not overly concerned with him, but I do think it's a decent price, especially when you look at, like, everyone seems to be talking about Lloris, which I don't really understand. Is that a Mourinho effect thing? He's a 5.5 defensive option. Dyer's 5. I think the issue with Dyer being 5, and probably something we didn't touch on too often, is that there's a shit ton of decent 4.5 options this year. Decent, like, Burnley defenders are pretty much stayed where they are. Sheffield United, I don't think, have risen as much as I thought they would. There's a shit ton of 4.5, and we will delve into this much deeper closer to the season with fixtures, because it just allows us to be a little bit more thorough. But as he stands with a 5.0 option to the Spurs defence, especially when you look at the likes of Aurier's 5.5, Alderweireld 5.5, as I said, Lloris 5.5, I don't think that's a terrible price point. I think, if you wanted to get in there.
Well, yeah, Dyer, if he's starting, might be too bad for. That's a 5.0 way into Spurs.
I said a while ago I didn't want to armchair manage, but to indulge the armchair manager in me, I do think that Dyer is going to probably be one of Mourinho's pet projects this year. I don't know why.
Maybe. I mean, it certainly got that impression towards the end of last season when he started saying he's going to play centre back, and maybe he will.
Really went to take a drink out of my microphone there.
Who's who did they sell, or they're selling to? I don't know, Sociedad or someone like that. It's is it Vertonghen or is it Alderweireld? Vertonghen.
You catch me off guard there, buddy. I do not know.
I always get those two guys mixed up because they're both
if memory serves me correct, Alderweireld just signed a new deal, didn't he? So I doubt. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is Vertonghen. I'm almost certain it's Vertonghen. So Vertonghen's on his way, which is one less defender. Sanchez is there, and obviously they've Foyth as well, who's kind of more of a utility player, can play right back, especially since they got rid of Kyle Walker-Peters. But I think that Aurier got a price increase as well. I think there's a good chance Dyer could be playing. And if he doesn't, he could play in midfield as well. So there's a good chance he'll get a lot of starts for 5.0. Could be a good option. The reason there's a lot of love for Lloris is that of all the keepers that I analysed last season, and this isn't including Foster, Ramsdale or Krull, because they had actually been removed from the game before I get the chance to check this. But of all the players... I checked their number of double points that they got last year and number of clean sheets, but I didn't actually make a note of their overall points and points per game. But of all the players that were in the game last season that are here this season, Lloris had the most points per game. He averaged 4.67 points per game last season, and if you break that down for his price 5.5, he has the best price per game ratio to his price of all the players
he's getting all
that are in there. So That could be a reason why he's getting all the loves, but like he did keep a lot of clean sheets, and they did look defensively sound once he returned and after the break. And if you trust Mourinho to do one thing, it's to tighten teams up defensively. So that's possibly a
Mm.
reason for that. So Dyer could be a good price.
Well, you
I have
mentioned
no
Lloris there,
interest
right? And
personally.
like, it's a perfect segue into maybe it's our us being on Twitter and we're fucking getting trapped in a bubble and everyone's talking about Lloris because I am seeing quite a bit of it. When you're to look at the most transferred in goalkeepers this season, Lloris isn't in the top 10. Do you know, like number one,
Oh,
Pope,
yeah. I mean,
33
I've seen people
thirty
talk
three
about
point
him,
eight
but he's
percent
not
of
there, is he?
players have transferred in Pope. I suppose he's the one that the general atmosphere is all around in terms of like someone that had an outstanding year and was on the edge of the Golden Gloves there coming into the last game of the season, and they're hoping can move on from here and kind of improve. To me, and I'm saying this right now without asking you, 5.5 is too much for a Burnley defender. What do you think?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I want to have a 4.5 defender. I want 4.5. I want somebody with save points, basically. Who's going to get a lot of saves, and you don't think, excuse me, you don't think a premium attacker, or sorry, premium goalkeeper, fuck me, is going to get all these save points. So Ederson, he's going to get clean sheets. He won't get save points. Same with kind of usually De Gea, apart from the season that he made all those saves because United's defense was shit. Same with Allison, to a large extent. Pope makes a ton of save points, but he also keeps clean sheets. So 170 points last season. We said on the last pod that was slightly higher than De Gea's amazing season a few years back, and we had no problem all just piling in on him. What I will say is that again, the stats show that Lloris is better value. Now he didn't play a full season; he only played 21 games, and he had 98 points. But he made saves per game of 3.81, which is the highest in the league. The next highest was actually Gaeta at 3.17 and Pope at
Mm.
3.16. But is Lloris's numbers? Oh, actually, sorry, Heaton was slightly higher, and so was Leno. Actually, good point. So Leno and Lloris making a lot of saves. So that the logic is these guys can't won't make a lot of saves, but they do that next season. I'd rather both of
Well,
those ahead of
yeah,
Pope.
and I think the issue with Pope is that you can get in on Burnley defenders at 4.5, like I mentioned already. The likes of me, 5 million, Tarkowski, 5.5 million, but your Bardsleys, your Taylors, they're all still 4.5. That's the big difference.
There you go. If you want to get involved in Burnley clean sheets, I definitely think that is the better way to do it. If you can find the Bardsley, Peters, or Taylor. I like Taylor. I don't really know if Peters is going to,
Keep his spot, yeah.
get in front of Taylor, or Taylor's going to. Barnsley seems like he's more likely to stay ahead of Loughton, I think,
The point
right
is, you
back.
can get cheaper Burnley
But
options. Now, hopefully, we're not eating our words at the end of the
yeah,
season. But, looking at another goalkeeper that is quite common, 25% selected so far, Matty Ryan. 4.5 million, you know?
yeah, he isn't my keeper at the moment. I've got McCarthy in goals. Sorry to
Well, I
spoil
feel like
things, but
that's you being biased
he's
due
my
to your namesake.
namesake, so I have to
Exactly,
go for him.
100%. I'm going with Ryan because he's not McCarthy. That's like I'm almost anti-biased to your namesake.
Yeah, well, they're both Irish names. Ryan is a tip name. McCarthy, that's probably
You should
more West
fucking
Cork.
know. You are McCarthy. You seem so confident on Ryan, and then McCarthy probably a bit closer down to the river. But yeah, no, Ryan's
Well,
4.5.
Ryan's definitely a tip name.
Ryan, it is a tip name,
But
and Ryan is a 4.5 goalkeeper. Button also smashing the top six owned goalkeepers so far this season with 8% because he accompanies Ryan so much. And I'm like not lying. At the moment, I have Nyland as my 4.0 keeper, but I do have Ryan. I think that makes sense. And if I was to start the season with Ryan, I probably would start with Pope or with Button as my second in command of the net.
yeah, at least if Ryan doesn't play for whatever reason, gets injured, then you don't have to waste a
Yeah.
keeper transfer. That's the beautiful thing about it. Whereas if I go for McCarthy and I have Button or a different 4.0 as my backup, if Ryan gets dropped for Gunn, who has played games, and Forster's coming back from Celtic after having a good season with them. Maybe he's going to be more confident. Maybe the manager wants to give him a go for a game or two in some games. And if that happens, I don't have a backup because my 4.0 is not going to play. If you've got Ryan, you know Button's going to play. If Ryan's
Yeah.
not playing, so one less transfer. So I get the idea behind it. And Ryan had a great season last year for like what did he get?
5.
130. Let
135.
me pull up his points. 135 points
Do
for
you know what made me
4.5.
go with Ryan James? I'll
Probably,
tell you right now. I had Ederson in there, and obviously I'm looking to cut points. Ederson came out with a grand total of 133 points last year. Ryan coming out with 135. That just sealed the deal for me. I was like, I was willing to go
yeah,
6 million. Man City, like they kept a shit ton of clean sheets. I know Ederson was because he was one of those players that I was constantly looking at in other players' teams and going, there's the City clean sheet, bumping him up an extra 4 or 5 points, and he was pretty much like the easy kind of he's my taking my spot and I'll reduce him if I need to. Saw that Ryan had 2 points more than Ederson and it blew my mind. He's not.
it's not worth it. Just go for a set and forget 4.5. The save points make a big difference over the course of the season. It may not feel like it, but um, yeah, I don't think he's going to worth it. Even in Ederson's better seasons, like if he kept an extra 3 clean sheets, that would be an extra 12 points. Is it worth it for the extra 1.5? I don't think so. And again, the worst thing about it takes up a City spot. Where you want sometimes there's going to be times in the season you're going to want three Man City attackers based on a fixture, double game week or something. So, yeah, I'm not a fan. I don't want to use transfers getting rid of Ederson in a situation like that. So I'm happy to go with someone like Ryan or McCarthy. I'm definitely looking at 4.5. I will be looking at Ramsdale if Sheffield United sign him. They've had an offer accepted. Let's see
Yeah,
how that plays out.
100%. And you mentioned City there and the amount of attackers they have, and KDB sits in 62.5% of teams at the moment. And it makes sense to me. It's like, yeah, I think he's the one that's going to be coming into the season as the main target, I'd say. For like last year, we were looking at the likes of Salah and Mane. I think everyone's going to be looking at KDB this year. I think he's kind of turned pretty much everyone's fucking head at this stage.
You can't look past the top point
No,
scorer in FPL from last season. You can't look past him. Always going to be the first player we look for price wise. Maybe with the exception of Trent this year. But yeah, De Bruyne was like one of the first. When I saw he was 11.5, I was like, well, he's underpriced based on his performance from last year. And I feel like he can keep that up. In actual fact, towards the end of the season, the very end of the season, emerged he's number one for penalties. So if he's nailed on for penalties next year, maybe Aguero is still, I don't know, maybe Aguero comes back and is in the team and he takes the penalties. But there's also an equal chance that Aguero, having missed a couple of penalties, has to wait for De Bruyne to
yeah,
miss
no,
one.
100%.
And,
I think it's
I don't know if
KDB's
he
to
will.
be taken off him, if you ask me, because we did see KDB take penalties with Aguero on the pitch, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, I think him being on penalties, he's pretty much standing over nearly every fucking set piece. And yeah, he's arguably the best player in the Premier League. So yeah, no surprise to see him at 62.5%. It is a surprise to see no other City midfielder in the top 10 or 12 than Foden, who, considering he missed the last couple of games towards the end of last season, he didn't start against Leon. And I know these might be tactical reasons, blah blah, but it is a bit worrying. And he's a 6.5 option this season in 12% of teams, but I'm not looking at him.
But that's a consequence of so many options in as a premium option in midfield. People don't want to go De Bruyne and Sterling. Sterling is obviously the other main one you might go for in Man
Also
City in
11.5.
midfield. You could go Mahrez, but yeah, Mahrez has also kind of, while he had an excellent season last year, and I think he's priced pretty well that he's interesting. The fact that his starts are so unpredictable is off-putting. And you saw that even in the Champions League, he didn't even start in the Champions League match
Yeah.
against Lyon. So if you can't trust Pep to start him, that's a lot of money when there's so many other good options there. So Sterling is really the only other viable option now that's what's his name is gone. David Silva's gone. Foden is just in a different price bracket, so I'm not including that. Um, and he's actually the next highest owned Man
Yeah,
City midfielder as
that's
a matter
fair.
of interest. But yeah, the Sterling one is just purely because people don't want both. They're going, you know what? I could have my Man City coverage with De Bruyne, and that's a protection pick for a lot of people. And then they're going, well, the next premium I want is either going to be Liverpool, and that's a toss up between Mane and Salah, but it's not really a toss up because Salah is on penalties. So you can see from the stats, Salah is hugely owned. Mane is not showing in the top 10 most transferred in owned midfielders at all. Aubameyang is interesting, a
What
lot
do you
of
make
players,
of
and
the
Fernandes, of
Mane
course.
not being in there, but Salah being right in there?
Well, what I see is the top four owned midfielders are all penalty
Yeah,
takers.
that's a good point. So you've got De Bruyne,
You
Fernandes,
know,
Salah,
and
and Aubameyang. Aubameyang's a bit of a surprise, and I know we touched him already. I didn't expect him to just smash straight into the top old midfielders, and I'm very surprised to not see Mane in there because I think for me, considering where I was 2 years ago in the Mane Salah debate, I have pretty much you know decided I was wrong. They're a toss of a coin between the two of them. I think they're both fantastic options.
mm-hmm.
The difference being Salah takes penalties, I think, at times. You know?
That's it. That's the only difference. As in, literally, I think they should be priced the exact same if Salah didn't have penalties. But the fact that Salah has penalties, I think he should be
Yeah.
0.5 more, maybe even a million more. But that's the only difference. 0.5 is probably enough for the
Yeah.
penalties. But if they're both the same price, I can't look past the penalties, man. I made this, I had this thought. I didn't make a decision, but I
I've
had a
warned
thought
you
on
about
this
these
a few weeks ago. Well, remember at the start, this time last year, before the season kicked off, VAR was about to be introduced. We
penalty
were like,
takers.
"Oh,
Yeah.
Milijevic for Crystal Palace." We were like, "Nailed him, my team. Gotta have him in my team." No one actually really looked at him in the end. Some people did go for him. How many penalties did he score last year? I think he scored like two, three, maybe. Got very, very little. And I think that the VAR is just benefiting the bigger teams more when it comes to penalty
Because they're
decisions.
faster, or
Maybe, well, yeah, I think they're faster. So, and they're you can kind of double up on players less. Like people can double up on Zaha, and then therefore he doesn't have to be left in a one-on-one situation in the box,
yeah,
and he doesn't get fouled. Whereas with Man United, you can't double up on any one player. With Arsenal, it's very hard to double up on any one player because there's also going to be another player that's going to penalize you or hurt you if you leave them free. So they go man for man, and then you go man for man. More chance that your player gets it wrong, gets past that player holds him down. And I think that's why United gets so many
yeah.
penalties.
I think it's just like
And I think, yeah, the big teams are going to get more penalties, and I think that's why you want Salah in your team rather than Mane. That's why you want Fernandes in your team more than you
no.
want
I do.
Rashford.
I completely agree with you there, Seamus. But there is a player in amongst the top transferred in midfielders who has yet to set foot, on the FPL fucking pitch, the proverbial pitch, and that's Ziyech for Chelsea, 8 million. And that's right, I did say Ziyech. I believe that's how he pronounces it, not Ziyech or Ziyech. I think it's Ziyech. And 8 million, 21.2% at the time of recording, owned, transferred in. And I believe your draft had him in there as well.
Yeah, he's been in a couple of my drafts. I think I'm on my third draft, and he's in my current one. I think he was in my second draft too. And the reason being, he's just covering a price point. I'm trying to have players at certain prices, two premiums, then maybe a third player in around the 8 to 9 million mark. Allows me to move to players. I kind of want Pulisic, but he's injured at the minute, and he's working his way back to fitness. May or may not be back for the start of the season. So, Ziyech could become Pulisic, but I think Ziyech is better value than, say, for example,
Yeah.
Pogba at 8 million. Pogba's looked off it recently. Ziyech has some amazing stats before he came into the Premier League. So last year in the league he was in.
The league he was in. Yeah.
It was the Dutch league. Sorry,
Eredivisie.
I've got gas. Yeah, in the Eredivisie, he'd only 21 appearances. He had reduced minutes because of injury and things like that. So he'd only 16,000 minutes or 1,600 minutes, excuse me. He had 6 goals, 12 assists. Season before that, he had 16 goals, 13 assists. Season before that, 9 goals, 15 assists. Season before that, 9 and 12. Season before that, 17 and 10. Season before that, 13 and 16. He has proven to get like close to around 10 to 15 goals in a season, over a full season. And he's always gotten 10 plus assists in the last 6 seasons. He loves a shot. Okay, he shoots from distance. He gets a lot of key passes per game. He just looks like ripe for FPL points. He kind of reminds me, stats wise, before he came into the season, of someone like Bruno Fernandes a small bit, even though he kind of plays more on the right wing, which is where he's probably expected to play with Pulisic on the left. So yeah, I think I'm very interested in him. I'm also interested in
Yeah.
Timo Werner. So the drafts I've had Werner, I haven't had Ziyech. Or like I'm glad one of us did the research because I don't know how to pronounce his name
I watched
yet. I'll
a
learn it.
clip on Twitter. I wouldn't call it research, but go on.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to either have Ziyech, Werner, or Pulisic if he's fit for game week 1 in my
Yeah.
team game week 1. I just haven't decided
No.
who yet. I think they're all really well priced and they're going to return points. And I want to get involved in, like, if Pulisic is injured, the player I want to give a chance to is going to be one of those two. Werner or
No.
Ziyech. I think other people are doing that too, and that's why it's
It
reflected
is,
in the
and as you
transfers.
said, Werner, he's 35.9% transferred in. A little surprising to me. I get the reason he's 9.5, but unproven. I tend to let players settle into the, not just unproven with Chelsea, unproven in the entire fucking league. So I want to let players settle in a bit, just to see what they fucking are. I would be lying if I pretended to know Ziyech other than stats that you've listed out or I've read in other places. It's like, okay, this guy looks like he's supposed to be a baller. And yeah, I'm gonna let them settle in personally. But you seem pretty convinced on Ziyech, and the fucking FPL community seem convinced on Werner. He is the top transferred in striker, just above of Martial by about 5%. And I think the issue is just looking at the most transferred in strikers is the difference in quality between your Werner and your Martial's 9.59 million in terms of most transferred in, and then it just drops down to Mitrovic at 6. 28% of players have Mitrovic at the moment. 6 million. I don't know. We've talked about the big teams. We talked about Chelsea. We talked about Man United. Fulham. Touch on some promotional prospects for us here, Seamus. You expecting Mitrovic to return to what he was at the beginning of the 2018-2019 season?
I think Mitrovic, he was in the league
Yeah.
last time I had him, I think he's useful. If Fulham are better, he might be a better asset. He'll get his head on a ton of headers, and the stats will show he's had so many shots on target. But a lot of them are tame headers, weak headers that he's just getting
I
from
believe
across.
for like
They're
the
not
shots on
big.
target, he
A lot of
also
those
had
aren't big
the
chances.
highest amount of misses or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, he will shoot. I mean, you will see him score a cracker outside the box every so often, but most of his shots are going to be, a header from the penalty spot, under pressure that, he may get on target, may not get on target. It's going to look like his stats are showing loads of shots, but it's really come down to the finishing. If Fulham are in games, then, he may prove to be useful. I'll definitely keep an eye on him. For 6 million, he's definitely a good shout for value. And, when you compare him to other strikers in that price bracket, like
Yeah.
Jordan Ayew, he's probably
Well,
going to
there's
be better
no
than
one
Jordan
in
Ayew,
the
I
in.
imagine. He's only 5 behind
Yeah.
Antonio and Woods. I'd rather those guys, but not by
No,
much.
I get you. I mean, like he's the only 6 million striker in the top 10, 12. Like there is an Antonio there for 6.5, but we know he's a reclassification, and there's a Bamford there for 5.5. I think it'd be interesting to focus more heavily, I suppose, on the promoted players as we kind of see what what fixtures lay ahead. But looking underneath Mitrovic, we have a Jimenez. 22% of players teams have transferred Jimenez in. I think we know what he is. You've called him the postman multiple times. He always fucking delivers. And yeah, I think 8.5 is a fair price. He's the same price as Danny Ings, pretty much same ownership.
I think he's slightly
You think
underpriced, if
so?
anything. Ings or Jimenez. I think Jimenez should be 9. I was expecting him to come in at 9. Wouldn't have been totally surprised if he was 9.5, but I thought 9 was what he would come in at. He seems underpriced. I think he'll still prove value at 8.5. Ings at 8.5 seems almost slightly overvalued. You know me, I had him last year. He was a hero for me. Loved the man. But unless he does what he did last year, 8.5 is going to be
Why would
8.5 would
you
be fine
expect him to
for
not do
200
what he
points,
did
which
last year, Seamus? Hmm?
because he still I still don't see Southampton scoring that many goals. This being said, right, Southampton, I've got McCarthy in goals, and one of the reasons being is that I think Hasenhüttl has got Southampton on the up, and I can see an uptick in performance. I would be interested in their teams at the start. Shea Adams is 2.5 million
Yeah.
cheaper than him. He's half interesting me just because of the price difference. I think he will be better this year than he was last year. I think he got off to a bad start, but towards the end of the season, after Project Restart, he was
He
he
was
was good.
tipping. He was tipping.
He was almost as good as Ings. So yeah, I'll be. I don't know. 8.5 is a lot. It's only 1 million more as Werner, and I think Werner is more explosive. The thing with Ings is he never really got too many double-digit hauls. I think he got three last year, is what my research told me. He's good for 8 or 9 points, and yeah, 8.5. I don't know. Ings always just strikes me as somebody who should be more than eight,
Yeah.
7.58. Even yeah, but his amazing season, like that's as good a season as you could
Yeah.
expect from Ings. I don't know if I can expect him to have that season again. I hope he does.
I don't
Hope he's
know
an
if it's
option,
the
but I can see him
Jameson and Ginger Ale
getting
Seamus
15 goals.
or what, but you're actually talking sense. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think Jimenez is undervalued at 8.5. I was expecting him to be hitting the 9 million mark, akin to a Vardy. And yeah, Ings 8.5, not a fucking hope am I paying 8.5 for a Southampton striker. Not unless he
Yeah.
makes me eat my words like he did last season. And then he
Well,
could.
he could.
That's the issue.
He could. But I would rather him than Richarlison at 8. I would say that. But I mean, when you consider that somebody like, as I said, Werner is 9.5, he's somebody that's interesting if I don't go for Ziyech. 28 goals, 8 assists in 33 starts and one substitute appearance last year. I've seen him play and he is excellent. And he's somebody that kind of excites me. I'm like, man, he could hit the ground running like now I know it didn't work out for him, but Morata hit the ground running for Chelsea and Diego Costa, we know how
Yeah,
good he was.
yeah,
No, excuse me. We know how good he was. They all came in at 10.5 at the time. So I was expecting him to come in at the same price. At 9.5, I'm like, he's underpriced. He comes in, does anything resembling what these guys did at the start, everyone's going to be piling in on him. And if he doesn't, 1 million more allows me to get to the likes of Aguero, who's also underpriced at 10.5. Can't believe he's 10.5. And that could be an easier second option to a City attacker than
yeah.
someone like
No,
Sterling.
Aguero and Kane coming in this year at 10.5. Pretty. I mean, I assume it's just to offload the heft they've added to the midfield with Aubameyang. It's like, let's give them some fucking premium striker options because I'm not convinced in anyone. Like the likes of Martial and Werner, maybe to an extent Vardy with 10 million, are probably the most convinced I am by strikers at the moment in FPL. Kane and
Yeah.
Aguero, I'm not willing to stretch that far. Not with the likes of Sterling and KDB with City and Son coming in at fucking 9 million for Spurs. It's just like I feel like I can live with that. But that is the strikers, and we have skipped over the defenders. So ye eagle-eyed listeners slash viewers might have noticed why you went from goalies to midfielders. I think that's because for me, the defensive options are just kind of ridiculous. I mean, like is Alexander Arnold running away with it. 56% of teams, pretty much the KDB of the defense in terms of no one's really, whether it be sheer fate or fear. Everyone wants a bit of Trent this season, and yeah, that's fine with me. Which it means
Yeah.
like the likes of Robertson, who's creeping in there with only a 10% ownership and a point 0.5 million cheaper option, could easily become a bit of a differential if you wanted to, you know, to play that game at the start of the season. But the rest of them, Doherty, Van Dijk, Wan-Bissaka, Egan for Sheffield United, all like pretty things you'd expect. I think the likes of Ake 5.5, bit of a surprise. I know I'm not thinking really of Ake. I need to see him settle into the City team, get his place. Couple of games in there, I'm not looking him at all. 13% of teams are, but I think that's a bit premature, as you know, Seamus.
What
You
does that mean?
you choosing on the
Premature
team
as I
side.
know.
That's what I mean.
What?
Yeah.
No, I mean, look, Alexander Arnold is underpriced. No two ways about it. 7.5. I think everyone thought it was going to be 8 million
Mm.
at the minimum. You know, think that's as expensive as we've seen a defender has been, about 8 million. I think that was Baines back in the day, maybe Vidic and Terry around the same time. But like how he's not eight
Well, I
million,
think
I
it's
don't know.
because
I
like
mean,
he didn't surpass Robertson, and they priced Robertson at 7 million last year. So they're going, look, like, how can we
maybe,
just like, what if he does go on and absolutely take Baines, turn him into an absolute fucking bit of dust, and own the FPL defenders fucking all time greatest option ever. You know,
but that's reflected in his ownership, man. So what's his ownership?
yeah,
56%
roughly,
so
yeah.
far. Everyone knows he's, yeah. I mean, as much as anything else, I mean, why would there's the upside for him for going for someone like Robertson instead of Alexander Arnold? The upside is not worth the risk. If they match each other and you have Alexander Arnold and instead of Robertson, it could be, that's this, I think that's as best as they can do, kind of maybe match each other. I don't see Alexander Arnold getting less than 200 points next year. And if he does, 7.5
Yeah,
is an absolute steal. If he does 7.5 midfielder getting 200 points, like we talked about, Martial maybe getting 200 points or Rashford getting 200 points, and we're talking about paying 9.5 for these guys. I think Alexander Arnold is easily worth
yeah.
8.59. So I was going to buy him when he was 8 anyway. So when I saw he was
I would
7.5, I
have
was like, there's an extra 0.5 I
I
can
would have been
invest elsewhere.
questioning it at 8.5 to 9. I won't lie. I'd have been going maybe,
There was at least the
yeah, a
decision to
decision to be
make.
had. I was like 7.5, 0.5 more expensive than last year. Yeah, get in my team, son. Like he's the first defender in a decade that has made me consider captaining a defender. I think
Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
completely captainable. I think the clean sheet is like saying I'm pretty sure he's assured a goal. So they should get a clean sheet. There's your goal. The amount of fucking set pieces he's on, like I don't want to fucking harp or wax lyrical about Trent, but it is, yeah. No, you've swung me around, Seamus. I didn't even come into this episode thinking I'm going to be like Trent's underpriced. He's 7.5. This is a travesty. You've completely convinced me, Seamus. We need to kick up a fuss and get this changed. You with that? You with me?
Well, it will be. I'm fairly certain it's going to be changed next year when they see him doing massive things. We said at the start of last season's pod we thought he was going to be the highest defender point scorer. He was, and yeah, I think next year he will be again, and he'll prove value. He's young. He's going to show it. The next player on the list there, ownership wise, is Doherty, who at 6.0 million is again excellent value. It's We saw how good Wolves were defensively towards the end of the season. We know he's got like 4 or 5 goals in him a season, under 5 or 6 assists in him as well. Um, when you compare him to the likes of the other 6.0 defenders like Dean or someone like that, or Laporte, I think he's the best value. Um, Van Dijk is a small bit more expensive, and who is it? Robertson is a bit more expensive. Let me ask you, actually, are you considering a Liverpool double up in defence?
Again, the fixtures are the things I'm saving that for. Very possible. Very possible. Like the more I look at formations, and it's something we haven't probably spoke about too much, but I've messed around with all of them in terms of 3-5-2, fucking 3-4-3. Like, what can I do with all this bullshit? I'm gonna need fixtures to get a clear picture of what I want to do with Liverpool, because I think Salah is pretty much Salah slash Mane. One of them is in my team. I'll probably like the more I'm looking at the midfield headache I'm getting, the more I'm thinking I just drop a player out of midfield and just have a Liverpool fullback, i.e. Robertson, and I think that'll just pretty much cover most, and then hopefully I get lucky with my differentials.
Yeah, and I'd put it this way. I think for 6.5 for Van Dijk, the last couple of seasons he's gotten about the 200 point mark. I can't tell the exact figures off my top of my head now, but if you were to get 200 points for 6.5 midfielder, you would be laughing. So I think, there's a lot to be said for going, you know what? I'll just make, instead of having a 6.5 fourth midfielder, I'll just make that, I'll play an extra defender and just make that a
That
4.5
could be.
junk midfielder. There's like, I can see there's just like one less headache to worry
No,
about
I
each week.
completely. That is as like when I set my team, I didn't look at it that way, and without even reading or listening or noting too much FPL wise, since then, I've already started coming towards maybe just fucking getting another Liverpool fullback in, because those cunts are essentially midfielders, And yeah, it takes a little bit of pressure off of the purse strings there in the middle of the field. But look, we are running a little bit long, Seamus, so we're going to quickly talk about our current drafts, and we're going to see pretty much where we are. I don't want to. We've pretty much talked about all of this shit already. I'm looking at your team here in front of me. You've mentioned McCarthy, Trent, Doherty, Fernandez, De Bruyne. You've actually gone Mane instead of Salah, oddly enough. Ziyech, which we've talked about, and there's a couple of ones in there that. Before we get onto the odd ones, I suppose Vinagre is someone that we both share, and someone that I suppose is going to benefit at the moment, transfers as they are, from the Johnny ACL injury. So Johnny did pull an ACL not so long ago, 2 weeks ago, and that pretty much opens up the spot for your man at 4.5, which is a nice little kind of sideways into the Wolves defense, especially if you're not willing to splash out in the 6 million for Doherty. So I think we both know what we're doing there. You have him on your team, but looking at the other ones, Seamus, you have a Dallas in there.
That was Ailing for a while. I changed it to Dallas. I'm probably not going to make too many chances on promoted teams, but I may take one in a 4.5 million defender, especially Ailing and Dallas are the ones that the Leeds fans I've spoke to have said are most likely to have the highest attacking potential.
I believe, aren't they?
And I there's a lot of talk that Leeds will, do what Sheffield United did this season just gone. They won't finish in a relegation battle. They will finish up in 10th to 13th position kind of thing. They're the most likely to finish higher up the league, and they won the league, and if that does happen, you want maybe a defender from their team, and maybe it's just an interesting one. I don't know that, like, as I said, I've Vinagre there in my team, and there's an opportunity to double up on Wolves defense, but that could easily be Burnley defender or something like that. I've gone for Ferguson as my 4.0 because he's the new signing for Crystal Palace, and a lot of the talk is that he's going to be the next Wan-Bissaka playing right back, and Joel Ward has to, he can't play forever, and there's a lot of hype around this guy, and maybe he turns into Wan-Bissaka from 2 seasons ago. Let's see.
You also have a Davis for Villa there, 4.5, another player we share, and another player that's highly, like, in the top 6 players owned forwards wise, I believe, and a bit of a surprise, 4.5. I think we're probably remembering the end of the last season when he got a couple of games, and you're thinking maybe he gets a run on the team.
Literally just remember him getting game time towards the end of the season, and I was like, 4.5, you know what, get on my bench. But Connor Wickham was an option again. I had Connor Wickham last year. I could have went for him again. I didn't. I just went with Davies. That's not set in stone. But what is set in stone is that my third striker will be garbage. It will be 4.5. But who's the other guy? There's another guy for Liverpool is 4.5. Yeah, it's not going to be him because I don't want to lock myself out of 3 Liverpool players.
Liverpool managed to get if he gets a loan to a different Premier League team, maybe he does become an option. So that could be. I know there's a few teams looking at him at the moment, but there's not a whole lot of other shocks in your first draft. Again, we're not going to go into this too much. I mean, we both fucking know that it's pretty much meaningless. You were shocked to see this as your draft.
I was shocked to see Calvert-Lewin and Wood as my strikers. The last formation I thought I had Werner up front, and Ziyech was say Maximum or something like that. So say Maximum, Armstrong, those are good 5.5 options. I think Souček is a really good option for 5 million. I've gone Mane over Salah, like you mentioned there, because Mane always starts the season on fire, and I make a mental note each year to go for Mane instead of Salah, and then switch over to Salah as the season progresses, and I never do. So I was like, maybe I'll do it this year.
Probably not.
But it's going to come down. Yeah, I may just chicken out and I just go for Salah. It's also a slightly differential to what everyone's probably going to do and go for Salah.
We're not going to put too much fucking fate in all this. I've got my differential or my first draft up there. Bit mad, like you mentioned. Your Ferguson is your 4 million defender. I actually have Brantwaite in there. Just, again, memories of the end of the last season. I was like, he got a couple of games. He didn't look too bad. I believe I had him in my Game Week 38 plus squad. But I've got him super heavy across the midfield with Salah, Son, Rashford, De Bruyne, and Traore. No Fernandez. I just think, like as we said, I think the points are going to be in midfield this year. I've gone super cheap then in strikers, the same as yourself, Seamus. I've gone Martial, so 1 premium and 2 4.5s, which will no doubt change because I think that's a terrible idea.
Two
Yeah, no,
four
I
point
think
fives.
that's a
Okay. Well, see, I could
yeah.
do that too. So you're 4.5 plus Martial. What's that coming to? 13.5, and I've gone for a 7 and a 6.5. So that's where my Calvert Lewin and
Yeah.
Woods comes in. But I don't even like two 6.5s. I like guys at different price points. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to change that and have somebody more up in the 8.5 or 9
Yeah,
million mark.
possibly. The more I look at the
And
likes of Mitrovic, and
and
as we mentioned
5.5.
earlier on, like 6 million for Mitrovic, I'm thinking he could be a sneaky little way just to have a playing second striker for me. But again, we got to see fixtures and stuff like that. But I mean,
Yeah.
they're the drafts. There's nothing mad in there.
It looks
What?
good. Looks good. I like your team. I think Rashford is going to have a better season than Martial this year, even though Martial impressed me more the back end of last year. That's the reason I think he's in a lot of people's teams. His form was excellent, but his classification as a forward, unless he ups his goal output, is going to result in a reduced amount of points. Rashford, I think, is going to suffer. I think you're right from what you said. Is going to lose some penalties, but I do think he's probably going to up his
Yeah,
output.
no, I agree. I agree. Any players, Seamus, before we wrap this up, that you feel like we've missed?
We didn't mention Kane, and you have Son in your team. We didn't really mention those. I think Son is definitely underpriced. I thought he would come in at 10. He's been consistent over the last few seasons. So 9, I think he's definitely
Yeah.
worth value. I'll be looking at Spurs if their fixtures are good. Even 10.5 for Kane. He looked really good at the end of last season. And we mentioned Aguero, it's also 10.5. Underpriced. If the fixtures are good, I'll be looking to have that price point covered in my
100%.
team.
And I think the key word there is if the fixtures are good. And that's something that we're going to be keeping a keen eye on. As we said at the top of the episode, the fixture list is out in a couple of days. So we should be able to reevaluate this and throw everything we've just done over the last few days directly into the bin because it was a complete waste of time. But that is FPL and that is why we love it. Before we wrap up, folks, I would like to thank everyone who is still listening, still watching. You can follow us on Twitter at FPL Hangover. You can reach out to us on Twitter. You can also reach out to us on Gmail at fplhangover@gmail.com. I would ask you, if you are still here at this point of the show, please like, retweet. If you're on YouTube, fucking subscribe because that shit means something apparently. So like, subscribe, retweet, all of the usual shit you're used to hearing. Imagine I just said it all right there and do it all. Even if you don't like what you heard, if you're still here right now, that's saying something. So maybe just fucking subscribe or like anyway.
If you don't like what you hear, it's more important to subscribe and like the podcast,
Yeah,
in fact, for
learn
some
the
reason.
errors of your way. But yeah, we will wrap it up there. Seamus, you got anything nice to say to these pleasant FPL folks?
No, guys, other than just really enjoy it. The prices will be out soon, and the fixtures will be out soon. Just
Yeah,
enjoy the tinkering. Be kind to each other. Don't no need to be so
so
bitter
bitter. I feel like you are having
out there.
terrible experiences online right now,
I've
Seamus.
seen it. I've seen it on Twitter. People are like, "Oh, why are you making multiple drafts?" This is the fun part of the season.
Yeah,
Enjoy it. Have fun. There'll be plenty of times this season we're going to be coming off the back of a bad game week, red
no.
arrows, whatnot. Yeah, enjoy it. Engage in the community. If you're on Twitter, send us a DM, send us a tweet, tag
Send
us.
your
Like the podcast,
You're
share
FPL
it.
drunk, Seamus, so any dick pics, as I constantly remind people, just that way, keep them in that direction. We won't have any issues. But yeah, dude, get involved. Enjoy it until it all kicks off, because that's when the hell starts. That's when the whole new hellscape will begin, and you'd be wishing it was preseason all over again. Yeah, again, thanks for listening, guys, and God bless.